topic. Loaded voltage dividers. All right, so what these guys are going to look like is this. I'll have a source, and let's go ahead, do this. Give me a tip. It's actually okay, cool. So I'll have a voltage source, and I'll have a resistor and another resistor. I think I'll do this with 3. And another resistor. So this one will be R1, R2, R3. I will have something out here that requires 20 volts at 5 milliamps. And I'll have something out here that will require 40 volts at 10 milliamps. And my voltage source here will be, let's say, 60 volts. So the task is to do this. Task is to design a stable voltage divider given these parameters. So given these parameters, we have 3 resistors that look like they're in series. They're stacked one on top of the other, but they're not entirely in series because they've got things hanging off to the side. So this is a form of a series parallel circuit exercise. These are called loaded voltage dividers. The rectangles represent the parameters of what's needed for this circuit to work. So this one will be RL number 1. This one will be load resistor number 2. So I have a load RL for load resistor number 1, and then this other one is an RL. It's an L, sorry. Let me make that better for you. RL2. Okay. So the way that we design this is a really simple rule. In design, start with your IR3 equals 10% of, oops, what did I do? No, go away, come back. Crash. Shoo. Oh, all right, 10% of, wow. Okay, IR3 to be 10% of combined required load currents. So that's a design parameter to give you something that is stable, something that can work all the time. Things won't blow up as long as you follow this rule. So the rule is, in designing, you want to start with IR3. Now, where's R3? R3 is the last resistor in the string, yeah? You want to start with that current. Right now, the current isn't given to you, but what's the rule? The rule says that current's got to be what? 10% of the combined required load currents. Do I have a load current for the second load resistor? It's shown as 5 milliamps. Do I have a load current that's specified for the first load 10 milliamps. If I combine these two, what do I have? 15 milliamps. What's 10% of 15 milliamps? 1.5 milliamps, is that right? So let's go ahead and write down our math. Our math says this will be IRL1 is equal to 10 milliamps. And then my IRL2 is equal to 5 milliamps. So my combined equals 15 milliamps, yes? And then so now, if I do this, so 10% of 15 milliamps is going to be equal to 1.5 milliamps. Is that right? I'm a little bit off the edge of the screen here, but everybody see that it would be 1.5 milliamps? We go with the math? 5 plus 10 makes 15. 10% is 1.5. So we're going to do this. We happen to have current here that will flow that is required to be 1.5 milliamps. Is everybody okay with that? Let me write this a little more legibly. 1.5 milliamps. Good. Okay. And do we have a current that's got to flow here? Let me change this so that, oops, put this resistor back. And let me draw that arrow going the other way. So we have 1.5 milliamps that has to flow through this R3 according to this design rule. And how much current goes in this direction down through RL2? It says we have, what's it specify? 5 milliamps, yes? Did my screen is frozen. Oops. I can get it back. Come back here. And I'll come back in just a moment. Okay, and let me just erase the last couple of steps so we can refresh what it is that I had said. All right, so did I draw an arrow going down R3 and that label that as 1.5 milliamps? Coming from this node, and let me label the nodes. Let's go ahead and label this node A and node B. So what else is attached to node B? At node B, don't I have a load resistor number 2? And how much current does it draw? It draws 5 milliamps, yeah? So I have to have current coming out to feed this guy. Goes down to here, and this current is specified at 5 milliamps. Does that help me determine the current that goes into node B? Yes. Remember Kirchhoff's current law. What does Kirchhoff's current law say? Sum of currents going in have to equal sum of currents coming out. Is 1.5 milliamps right here coming out of node B? Is 5 milliamps coming out of node B? So how much has to come into node B in order to split and feed these two lines?
6.5 milliamps.
How do you do the math? You add them up, right? Because you have to have 6.5 coming in order for 5 to go this way and 1.5 to go this way. Does the math work out? 1.5 plus 5 gives you 6.5 milliamps has to go in. So does that help you determine the current going through the second resistor? Okay, so draw an arrow down, and this current here has to be 6.5 milliamps. Everybody good with that so far? Now take a look at node A. Analyze what's happening at node A. As you analyze what's happening at node A, is a wire attached going to the right to a load resistor number 1. How much current flow has to flow through that wire? Because the parameters say we have to have 10 milliamps, because that was the demand of that particular load. Well, at node A, do I have a current coming down of 6.5 milliamps? Do I have a current going to the right of 10 milliamps? Both of those currents are leaving node A, yes? Do I have another wire coming down through R1 into node A? Does that help us determine how much current has to come into node A? How much current has to come into node A?
16.5
You have to add the 6.5 plus the 10 milliamps in order to determine. You have to have a current coming in. That's got to be 16.5 milliamps. And that comes from your source right there. Whoops, did I lose this again? Hold on one sec. It's being captured in Canvas, but we're losing the screen. So give me just a moment. We'll get the screen back. We're asking this to do multitask. Well, be nice to me. Press and hold. Okay. All right, looks like it came back. Cool. So I now have the current that goes out. Okay, how much current is going to ground through R3 is 1.5 milliamps, yes? How much current is coming to ground through RL number 2? 5 milliamps. How much current is coming down through to ground through RL number 1? 10 milliamps. How much total current is coming to ground? 10, 5 plus 1.5 is a total of 16.5 milliamps. That's what has to come back up. 16.5 milliamps. Okay, I'm not drawing the arrows at the bottom of the circuit. This is drawn as open loop. I shouldn't have to connect the grounds together with the wire. You should hopefully appreciate that the grounds are all interconnected, okay? Good. All right, do we have enough information to determine what R1, R2, and R3 is? How do we go about solving for R1, R2, and R3? You know Ohm's law. Do you have enough pieces to determine? Take a look at R3. Do we have enough information to solve for R3? First of all, do you know the current through R3? What is the current through R3? 1.5 milliamps. How did we determine that?
10% of combined.
That was the design rule, 10% of your combined load currents, yes? So we know that by the rule of design. Do we know the voltage across R3? Yeah, we do. Do I have a load RL2 attached to node B?
Yes.
Does that load specify two demand values, two required values? One happens to be 5 milliamps. What's the other value?
20 volts.
That load has to have 20 volts in order for that load to work. So that means we have 20 volts across RL number 2, yes?
Yes.
Is RL number 2 connected to to R3? How are they connected? Are they in series? Are they in parallel? What's their relationship?
Series through the common ground.
They're what?
Series through the common ground.
Well, series means they have a same current path. That means they have to have the same current. And they clearly don't have the same current. They're said to be in parallel. The rectangle is only for our information. The rectangle is not an active part of the circuit. So what you have, RL2, this guy is physically connected to node B. Okay, this is only for our information. This is not any active component in the circuit. So can you see that RL2 and R3 are in parallel with each other? They're not in series, because if they were in series, they should have the same current, right? And clearly they don't have the same current. This is 1.5 and this is 5 milliamps. So this is just here as a statement of what's required for this load. But RL2 is connected to R3 and they're in parallel. What's the same in parallel circuits?
Voltage.
So if you know the voltage for RL2 is demanded at 20 volts, don't you know the voltage at point B with respect to ground? What's the voltage at point B with respect to ground? It must also be 20 volts. So now do you know the voltage across R3? Uh-huh. So how do you reconcile what's going on with this? Well, we could do a couple of things. I would submit to you, why don't we try this? Why don't we try, okay, this is good. I'm going to scoosh this up. And I'm going to do a V, I, and an R. And I have to have R1, I have to have an R2, I have to have an R3, then I have an RL1, I have an RL2, and then I have totals. So this is going to be a tall chart, but a not very complicated table here. Okay. So VIR, 3 columns. Do you have the rows for R1, R2, R3, RL1, RL2, and totals? So far, so good. What can we fill in on this table so far? Our voltage total, yeah? Because our total voltage is given as what? 60 volts. So let me go ahead and write in 60 volts. So 60 volts goes right there. What else do we know? We don't have any of the R values, but what do we know? All the currents. Do we know the current through R1? We wrote that up as how much? 16.5 milliamps. So let's go ahead and write in 16.5 milliamps. Do I know the current through R2? That's given on my drawing as what, 6.5 milliamps? So let's go ahead and write 6.5 milliamps. Cool. Do I know the current through R3? R3 was a design current of 1.5 milliamps, so I can fill that in, yeah? So I'm going to do 1.5 milliamps. Do I know the currents that were specified for the load 1 and load 2? Well, that was part of what they're given. So RL1 was given as how much current? 10 milliamps. So let me go ahead and write 10 milliamps. And do I know the load current for RL number 2? That was specified as 5 milliamps. So I'm going to write down 5 milliamps. 5 milliamps. Were we able to determine total current? Yeah, we were. Total current was determined when we add all this up to be how much? 16.5 milliamps, yes? So can I fill that in? 16.5 milliamps. So do you get the impression that solving your loaded voltage dividers is based heavily on current analysis? Yay? Current analysis is the key to solving these guys. You filled in an entire column of current. Boom. That's significant. Now let's go ahead and fill in some of the voltages. All right, so what voltages can we fill in based on the information in the schematic? Jacqueline, give me one. Load 1, how much voltage across load 1? Because it's specified, that's a demand, yes? It's demanding 40 volts across RL1. So I'm going to go ahead and write for this, RL1 is 40 volts, there. What else is known besides the total? We know that the total is 60, RL1 is 40, Sarah?
What do we know besides that?
What other voltages are given?
RL2 is 20.
RL2 is 20 volts. Everybody, that's given. So let's put down RL2 is 20 volts. So far, so good. We're filling in the voltages steadily. So far, so good. All right, now let's go ahead and see what else can we do here. R1, how do we determine the voltage for R1?
In series with the voltage source, so there's nothing else to do.
Yeah, it's in series with the voltage source. Okay, there's nothing else between it and the voltage source except the wire. So how do we determine the voltage across R1? Yusuf, you're on a track here. What do you think?
The voltage source.
Is it the voltage source? Do I have all of the 60 volts across R1? I don't think so. I have all of the 60 volts across the entire network of resistors. So it's a good start. Who else has got a clue? We have all the clues in front of us. I would start at the very bottom. Take a look at R3. R3 is attached at point B, yes? is there a voltage at point B to the load? How much voltage is at point B to the load? 20 volts. It's right there on your schematic, yes? So if that's 20 volts that load number 2 requires, isn't that 20 volts also across R3? So R3, the voltage across R3 should be 20 volts. Are we in agreement with that? Okay, so R3 should have 20 volts. Okay, 2 more voltages to go. So that means from here to here, we have 20 volts. So how do I find the voltage across R2? What do you think? Wei Ji, what do you think? 40 volts across R2? Okay, you're coming at it similarly to ESYS perspective. But here's the thing. Here's what you want to see. I have 60 volts at the top across all of these guys to ground. Isn't this 60 volts to ground? So that means 60 volts at that tippy top there all the way to ground. Let's work from the bottom up. Clearly at point B, I have 20 volts, yes? At point B, I can write down 20 volts right here. Do I know the demand for this load? Load 1 demands how much voltage? 40 volts. So that means I have to have how much voltage at point A? I have to have at point A 40 volts, is that right? And I have to have at point B 20 volts. So could I write this down, give you an additional clue here that'll help you out. My VB is 20 volts. My VA is 40 volts. Let me magnify that. Is that big enough for you all to see? It's a cool thing about OneNote. Now, do I have voltage at the bottom of the second resistor? How much voltage is at the bottom of my second resistor? 20 volt. Do I have voltage at the top of the second resistor? How much voltage is at the top of the second resistor? How do I know that? Because that's what has to feed my load, right? So if I have 40 volts here, and I have 20 volts here, how much voltage do I have across this guy?
20 volts.
That has to be the difference of potential. Remember, voltage is described as the difference of potential between 2 points. Is there a difference between A and B?
Yeah.
How much is that difference?
20 volts.
20 volts. So are we in agreement that the voltage across here, R2, is 20 volts? Okay. So the voltage across R2 is 20 volts. So let me bring this back here. Doing these here is 20 volts. So how do I determine the voltage across R1?
60 minus 40.
60 minus 40, says your classmate, because how much is at the top?
60 volts.
Right here, at the top is connected to the source, so I have 60 at the top. How much do I have at A?
40.
40. So is there a difference of voltage between these 2 points? How much is that difference? 20 volts. So did we just now figure out the voltage across R1?
Yes.
20 volts, yes? $20 volts. Are we okay with all of these voltages? Do we have enough information to calculate a column of resistors?
Yes.
Easy schmeezy. Let's go ahead and do that. So first calculation goes to Isaac, second calculation Wei Ji, third calculation goes to Sarah. The fourth resistor goes to Robert. Fifth resistor, RL2, goes to Brad. And Jacqueline, give us the total. So those are your calculations. All right, so Isaac, you're calculating the first one for us. That'll be 20 divided by 16.5. And it should be 1.21 kilo ohms. How many people agree it should be 1.21 kilo ohms? I mean, you're all calculating your own, yes. I verified 1.21 kilo ohms. Thank you, sir. And the next one, wage E, you're calculating the second resistor, which is 20, divide by point.
3.08 kilo ohms.
So it works out to 3.08 kilo ohms. And then the third resistor, Sarah, what do you have for us?
13.3 kilo ohms.
And it works to be 2 digits,
33.
13.33 kilo ohms would be correct. Great. And Jacques, let's see, Robert, you would have the fourth resistor, so 40 divided by 10 milliamps.
4 kilo.
Works out to be 4 kilo ohms. And Brad, you have the next resistor, which would be 20 divided by 5 milliamps.
Yeah, about 4 kilo.
Works out to be 4 kilo ohms. Is that coincidental? That's coincidental. And then, Jacqueline, you have the total
3.64 kilo.
and works out to be 3.64 kilo ohms. Precisely. That is how you design a loaded voltage divider. Okay?
When you say design, what does that?
Design means you come up with the R values.
Oh. okay.
Yeah, you weren't given the R values. You were given what the first load requires. You're given what the second load requires. You're given a total voltage source, 3 resistors to drop the voltages. You have to figure the rest out.
And
Okay?
the 10%?
10% is a design rule.
Okay.
Okay, and that's accepted in the industry for something that is stable. We don't want a current through that last resistor that's too high or too low. And a good starting point for the overall circuit to work with good stability is 10% on that last resistor. Okay? Okay. So you have a couple of worksheets on this. I gave you one for this week. So everybody, you should have this worksheet here. This is week 12.1, and it says voltage divider homework, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. Try to work this out between now and Thursday, because we will be meeting Thursday, okay? And so if you have questions, we can discuss those in great detail between now and Thursday, and hopefully you will have those values. Do you also have one that says week 13? Yeah, you have a week 13 that says voltage divider. Homework number 2. Everybody see that one? So you have one in advance for next week. So if you want to work ahead and try to work this one out, you can as well. And then I'll generate more stuff for us to play with. You have one more worksheet that we did not talk about. That's this one here. This one we will talk about. You should be able to do the first one, the series one. I haven't shown you how to do a parallel one. I'll discuss that on Thursday. Okay. Okay, so you got plenty of things to keep you busy between now and Thursday. And I do need to see you guys on Thursday. Some people have not been attending regularly. So Isaac, is there some schedule conflict you have on Thursdays?
Yeah, sometimes, but not with the school.
Okay, whatever you can do to definitely catch that. If you can't make it with us, then you'll definitely do catch it before our next class meeting, okay? And Brad?
Yes.
And with you, okay, and most everybody else I kind of see. Any other questions for me this evening? No? Okay. Hey, we finished before 9 o'clock. Woo-hoo. Good job, everybody. Good lab. And I will stop the recording.